Okay. Brother Kwame, you have been living and working in the Republic of Guinea for many, many years now. You are a founding member of the All African People's Revolutionary Party, and you have been working hand in hand with the Democratic Party of Guinea for some time. Could you please tell us something about the relationship between the All African People's Revolutionary Party and the Democratic Party of Guinea, and your role in both, if possible?
The Democratic Party of Guinea grew out of what was known as the RDA, the Rassemblement Democratique Africain in French, the Democratic African Assembly. This was a Pan-African formation of countries which were colonized by the French. The Democratic Party of Guinea became the branch of the RDA inside of Guinea. This was 1947. Secretary was not the first general secretary of the PDG, Democratic Party of Guinea, in French, Parti Démocratique de Guinea. If my memory serves me correctly, Amadou, he was the third or the fourth Secretary General of the PDG, Secretary. I think it was the third or the fourth. Tragically, Kwame Nkrumah founded the All African People's Revolutionary Party when he was here in Guinea as co-president. As co-president of Guinea, he was able to devote his time to properly analyzing Africa and the revolutionary needs to a rapid movement towards the social unification of Africa. And it was here that he was able to complete the Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare. He had already sketched earlier notes for the books, but when the reactionary regime took power in their stupidity, they passed those notes on to the CIA. They were so stupid they probably didn't get paid for it. So when in Guinea he had to reconstruct, and this is where the All African People's Revolutionary Party is first properly expressed publicly. I had the honor of reading the book in its manuscript form when I first visited Guinea here in 1967 at the invitation of the Democratic Party of Guinea to attend the 8th Congress, which was the Congress of the Cultural Socialist Revolution. So, when I came to Guinea in 1967, and I met Osagyefo, and both he and Secretary, the co-presidents of Guinea, he invited me to come back to be a secretary, and President Secretary invited me to come back to Guinea since it was my home. So maybe they were being polite, but I was serious. When I returned to the United States, I had all intentions of coming right back to Guinea. But the American government legally seized my passport and I kept it for some 9 or 10 months before I was able to return to Guinea. Immediately upon my return in Guinea, I was working under both President Secretary and President Kwame Nkrumah. So with the aid of the PDG, of course, was already a party in power. It was moving along to the state level of state party states. So I just functioned as a militant inside the PDG, and the AAPRP began the first circles here in Guinea with those who were around staff.
Recently, at the 13th Congress of
All right. Greetings, everyone. We hope that you are doing well and maintaining your highest level of safety, ideological greatness. And we just hope that you are doing the best that you can to maintain all of the nonsense and chaos that capitalism continues to throw at us left and right. I am so happy to host another Our Ancestors' Voices on behalf of the All African People's Revolutionary Party. We want to first give homage and acknowledge our Indigenous comrades, for without them, we would not be using their physical space of land. And privileged to have a friend of mine just move up to Toronto for a new position. And I was thinking in more detail about how my friend was telling me how they have a classroom that has a majority of Indigenous students in the class in Toronto. And I was thinking to myself, yeah, that makes sense, because we always talk about how the Indigenous land is not just the Americas, right? The Indigenous land is starting as high up as Alaska all the way down to Chile and everything in between. And so just really exciting to think about how we want to continue to acknowledge that all of that is their land, and that we want to continue to work and support our Indigenous family to get their land back as much as possible. I even had this conversation yesterday with my dad about how, the American Indian movement is not just an organization that benefits Indigenous people in the Americas, right? And so just thinking in more context about that and trying to be more critical about that, I think, is going to be really, really helpful as we continue to try to support and help our comrades do what they need to do so that they can continue to get their land back. And so I just think that that's really important to acknowledge that. And I am just going to pause for just a second, you all. I have to give a co-host privilege here. All right. All right. Again, thank you, co-host, for being here. This is really helpful to have you here with me. I appreciate it. All right. So yes, so without further ado, we're going to continue on, but I just wanted to acknowledge our Indigenous family and just, make it clear that without them, we would not be able to be physically on this land, whether we are joining from Canada or if you're joining from Alaska, if you are joining from one of the Americas, without them, we literally wouldn't be here. And so I think it's just really important to acknowledge that. And we thank them for allowing us to be in their space for as long as we have. Of course, helping them to get their land back supports our cause as well. And that's one of the reasons why the All African People's Revolutionary Party is so bent and so instrumental in supporting Indigenous people to get their land back. But not just Indigenous people, we thrive and support any colonized people who have suffered from land being stolen or have suffered at the hands of murders or rape or whatever that may be for those folks. This is why we have alliances with different organizations around the world, because we understand that working with the Palestinian Liberation Organization is one way that we can support the Palestinians getting occupied Palestine back. And we understand that working with different organizations that are based in different parts of South America, as well as Haiti and Cuba, these are all different ways that we can connect the dots and help not just African people, but other folks who have been colonized and who have been oppressed and exploited to get their land back as well. And I also just continue to think about one of the longest relationships that I can remember the All African People's Revolutionary Party having has been with the Irish Socialist Republic organization. And so just continuing to acknowledge even our work in terms of connecting with our comrades from Ireland and the fact that they fortunately have suffered at the hands of colonization from the British for over 1,000 years at this point. And so I think it's important just to continue to acknowledge that, because it's not just about colonized people of color. Unfortunately, even some Europeans are suffering at the hands of colonization and the impacts of that. So, just continuing to think about how we need to continue to think about who has the most power. And we know that Britain has colonized quite a number of people around the world. And so just thinking in more context about that, what gives Britain so much power? What is it that allows them to be able to exploit and harm and kill and rape and steal land from so many people? And how soon can we continue to organize with one another so that we can fight back against that? That's what it's all about at the end of the day. And so, of course, you already know this, but I just want to go through it just the same. You are listening to a weekly broadcast of our Ancestors' Voices, which has been sponsored by the All African People's Revolutionary Party. My name is Shukura Umi, and I am very humbled to be able to hold it down once more while we wait for our comrade, Brother Ajamu, to get back from traveling from home at Guinea-Bissau. From what I understand, our comrades had an incredible first ever Party of Congress event. And so we're very happy that they have been able to do some very important and diligent work. And you're actually going to be in for a treat, folks, because hopefully, with the ancestors willing, my dad will make it back safely. And when he does, we will be able to hear from him next weekend all about this Party of Congress and just a report out of what has been done. So just what a treat, right? What a treat to be able to benefit from that. And so we're going to benefit from that on next weekend. But for this weekend, I'm going to hold it down just a little bit more. And again, I ask for you all's patience. I'm literally doing 7 things at one time. So just trying to keep up with everything. So please be patient with me. And if you are in the All African People's Revolutionary Party and you are joining on Facebook or YouTube or Zoom and you're able to answer questions that you see in the chat, please help me out and assist with that. Because like I said, I may not be able to cover all of that ground. So our Ancestors Voices is hosted every week at this time at 4 p.m. Pacific and 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Eastern. And we do the best we can to base our principles on this broadcast based on our co-founder, Kwame Nkrumah. And so you see one of the many books that he wrote and published. To the right there, the Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare has been the foundational principles that gave birth really to the work study process that the All African People's Revolutionary Party follows, as well as giving birth to some different subcommittees that we have adopted within the AAPRP and other such methodologies for how we go about and operate. So we continue to use our comrade Nkrumah's wisdom. We use our comrade Touré's wisdom as another co-founder of the All African People's Revolutionary Party and our work study process, as well as thinking about our comrade Amilcar Cabral and so many others who have just been instrumental in helping to give birth to this movement and this organization that has given us so much life. So in case I did not already mention tonight's topic, it's actually going to connect Pan-Africanism with public health, which I think is a really important topic because we've talked so much about different seminars that talk about disparities and things that Africans are suffering from. But I want to continue to highlight how if we do not do everything we can, and I understand that capitalism is a huge contributing factor to why Africans are sick in the first place, but if we don't do everything that we can as Africans to resist the fact that we are already more susceptible to being sick, then we're giving capitalism more of an advantage. And that makes it that much harder for us to organize against it and to get our land back. So, tonight's topic is going to be all about ways that we can collectively try to help one another prevent getting sick, for lack of a better term. And, we only have an hour to go through so much. So I just thought I would try to pull about 5 or 6 different concepts that we could try to think about in terms of how they threaten our health and think about different ways that we can navigate through that. So, we understand that we cannot fight against this system unless we are healthy and unless we are able and willing. And so today's presentation highlights how Pan-Africanism and public health are actually more connected than we know, because of course, we don't just want Africans on the continent to be healthy, and we don't just want Africans in Canada to be healthy, we want Africans everywhere. So that's where that Pan-Africanism lens comes from, because we're thinking about our comrades everywhere, whether they're in the diaspora or whether they're on the continent. And we're also thinking about public health from an operationally definition, where we're basing it off of humanity, and we're basing it off of people, and we're basing it off of people living as long a quality of life as they can. And so I would borrow from our comrades in Cuba, or borrow from our comrades at home when we think about public health truly, truly, truly being an entity that ensures that all people can have an outcome that will allow them to have a healthy quality of life in all aspects, and that we will do everything we can to ensure that they have a long quality of life as much as possible. Because if they have a longer quality of life, then that affects us. Why? Because we're socialists. This is a socialist organization, and we believe that if all of us can contribute greatly to making Africa a better place, and operating off of a socialist economic system instead of a capitalist one, then that's going to contribute more to us benefiting from the resources that Africa has to provide. But none of us can enjoy those resources if we are dying at alarming rates and if we're dying sooner than we're supposed to, okay? And so we have to continue to think about how we can do that. And again, some of that is instrumental and individualized, and a lot of it is collectivized. And so we're just going to be talking about some different points of that. But I think it's important to also mention we need to protect ourselves against the wear and tear of the system. That's going to be really key in terms of us building up our ideological immunity so that we can be better equipped to organize against it. We think so much about immunity in terms of having vitamin C, or maybe we think about immunity in terms of getting sleep. And we're going to talk about sleep in just a second. We might also think about immunity in terms of making sure that we're trying to make sure we have a balanced lifestyle in terms of food and nutrients that we're putting in our body. And all of those things are so critical. They are. But I'm talking about an ideological immunity, because you won't be able to help build up this organization, and you won't be able to help Africa get control of their land back if you are not ideologically capable of doing that. That means doing the work and understanding who the founders are that have laid the bricks for us to be able to move forward. They gave us the steps, and they've told us step by step, book by book, how we can navigate, how we can manage, how we can continue to make sure that Africa can be free once and for all. And so that means we need to do the research on that. We're not going to be able to manage that if we don't look at the books to look at what our ancestors have tried to already tell us time and time again. So this ideological immunity is going to be really key in helping us to do that. And, you can see, if you're joined on Zoom, you can tell from the PowerPoint slide that, I'm talking about this background of where we've been, right? So we know that we've come from inhumane, unethical treatments. We know that we have suffered at the hands of colonization, which was unethical and inhumane by itself. And then as products of enslavement, we had to become property for Europeans who were plantation owners. And then from there, we were dropped off all around the world in exchange for spices and goods, but never seen as human beings, and never valued our health by the same token. I talk in great context about that in my dissertation, and about how a lot of African folks, especially those who can labor babies, because my dissertation is about maternal mortality, they didn't even have the ability to get checked out in between laboring these children while they were enslaved, because after you labor the kid, you're supposed to get right back to work, right? It's not like you can go to the doctor and take time off from maternity leave if you're a slave, right? And so I think it's really important to think about that, because there was no health insurance for us. And if there was no health insurance for us, then we never got to really value how we're supposed to take care of ourselves. I'm not saying that health insurance is the only way we can be healthy, because clearly we know that that's still based on a capitalist system, whether or not you have insurance or not. But I think it speaks to elitism, and it speaks to privilege for those that do have health insurance, and being able to use it to navigate those roads differently, right? Being able to get a special prescription for a medication is definitely going to give you aid and support where you can prevent a specific virus or antibiotic medicine treatment that is developing in your body, compared to somebody who lives on the street who has no access whatsoever, not only to be tested to see if they have some type of virus, but also to have access to any antibiotics. That's just not going to come in their realm. I always think about people who are on the street, and I do the best I can to be mindful that I want to try to give them toothpaste and toothbrushes. But I wonder how many dentists are thinking about ways that they can have mobile trucks driving around and giving free dental exams. Because, if you don't take care of your teeth, that's one of the fastest ways that you can lead to having heart issues, because gum disease is tied to blood pressure, which is tied to blood circulating, which is tied to heart issues. So I think it's really critical that we just think in more context about these things, because this is where we come from. This is our timeline of how we have been treated since we got here, and since we have been kidnapped. This is what's been happening. And so, we're thinking about all these things. We remember that we're coming from a place where people didn't value us, and they literally wanted to study diseases by injecting us with them. That's where we're coming from. And to some of us, we haven't received the treatment to eradicate those diseases, which means for generations to come, we have passed that on, because we know that diseases can be passed on biologically as well. And so, we should know that we've come from a lifetime of struggling, and we have tried to work really hard to gain respect based on how Africa itself has been perceived, because that's the other piece of the puzzle, is that until Africa is free or considered to be something that needs to be respected, no person that descends from the continent is going to be respected, right? And so I want to first just try my best to talk about how, if you think about fitness and if you think about having a different approach to sleep, then that's going to affect your mood, which is going to affect you being able to organize in a different capacity, right? And so we think about the consistency of fitness and, whatever that looks like for us. I'm not here to tell you that you need to work out for 60 minutes a day, because that's not realistic for my lifestyle right now. I do the best that I can when I can. And sometimes that means waking up at 2 or 3 in the morning to do so, which still affects my sleep, which is why I'm trying to go to bed earlier. But again, these are both two mechanisms, getting sleep and working out, that I strongly need in my corner so that I can resist capitalism on a stronger physical and mental and ideological level. If I am not fully slept and rested, then I'm not going to be able to deal with the barbaric system that we live in. And if I'm not physically fit to deal with that, it's going to hurt me and affect my health in more ways than one. And so, consistent fitness means being able to fall asleep faster each night. So doing the best you can to try to go to bed at a consistent time that is regulated by your body. Of course, we know that also means you're waking up at a similar time too, doing the best you can to try your best to have a set bedtime, whatever that might look like for you. This also shows from studies that if you are going to sleep at the same time, or at least in a ballpark, then you're able to fall asleep faster and you have a more protected sleep, because you're able to sleep stronger and you're not going to wake up as much. There's also been studies that have reported that if you have better sleep, it affects your mood. And I mean, that makes sense, right? Because if you're tired, then you're more irritable, right? Well, if you're irritable, then how are you going to make it to the work study meeting on time? How are you going to be able to complete the reading if you're not able to do that? So I hope we're seeing some connections with how this is really important for us to think about how we can be better organizers, really, and live longer lives if we're leading these healthier lives, right? And so thinking about how better sleep can affect our focus and allow us to think more critically. I also think about how fitness would look like everything from walking to muscle building. Maybe you're doing plank jacks for just, 20 rotations a day. Maybe you're doing sit-ups. Maybe you're doing push-ups. Maybe you're finding a way to do burpees or mountain climbers. Maybe you're finding a way to get as many steps completed as possible while you're at the job. Maybe you're finding a way to do some arm push-ups in between you sitting at your desk. If you are typing every day, then you're doing some type of wrist action where maybe you're doing Supermans or flying jets. I've heard different people call them different things, or superwomans or super persons or whatever that might look like, but just different things of whatever that looks like for you in terms of fitness. It could be walking the dog, it could be squats, it could be bicycles, it could be figure eights, it could even be yoga, like whatever that looks like for you, so that you can be the best person you can be to navigate this capitalist system, right? And so I always think about jumping jacks and how they give me so much energy. And I think that's a better way that we can think about being organizers, is if we have more energy, then we're more able to think clearly about what it is we need to do. Sometimes you may not be able to complete your organizational responsibilities, especially if you've taken on a lot of tasks for that particular unit or committee that you're involved with. But maybe if you had more energy your way, then you might be able to delegate out those tasks differently. And you may be able to think about doing, your reading for work study on one day, and then you complete your PowerPoint slide the next time, and then you do something else the next day. And then it's more equally distributed. So you're not as overwhelmed, A. And then B, you're still fulfilling your task and responsibility. So there's that commitment to principle and dedication. And then last but not least, you're helping to build the organization, because you completed these tasks, you volunteered for them, and you got them done. So, I also want to point out, for a lot of us, another reason that our sleep might be impacted is because we're giving ourselves access to light before we need to be waking up for the day, right? And so, you know, if that means shutting out all light, if that means putting your phone on do not disturb, if that means turning your phone down, face down, so that when you get notifications throughout the night, it's not impacting you, whatever that may look like, make time for a change. So maybe that means you're reading and you like to watch Netflix. And maybe what you do is you make sure that you get your reading done, you go to work study, and then you still make time to watch that new movie on Netflix or that new series. And so just being able to balance those things out, I think, is going to be really key. No one is saying that you need to be organizing 24/7 and you don't get to have any downtime. Downtime is precisely what's going to keep you healthy so that you can continue to organize. And so I think just being able to connect those two is going to be really important. All right. Okay. So I also think we should think about, what does it mean to have heart health that leads to nourishment and mental health? Okay. And so, you know, we want to find places that are resisting our current oppressive structures. And that is really, really hard for some of us. And so, you know, you want to think about how maybe that means that you are thinking about considering to research what are some local birth centers near you. If you and your partner are expecting, then maybe you might want to research some birth centers, because another way to think about having, you know, a more relaxing experience, I'm not saying it may not be traumatic, but usually when people are laboring a child, if they're able to labor a child in a birthing center, then there may be some more alternative approaches in place where it might be a more relaxing environment for the laboring person who is giving birth, right? As opposed to hospitals that have been known from research to be cold. It's very sterile in hospitals. You cannot bring all of your family members in there, so you feel emotionally isolated and alone. It's very hard for you to communicate with providers because people are running in and out of your rooms. They're snipping at you and picking things and drawing blood, and it's not really a conducive environment for a person who's just trying to navigate around what's going on. Whereas if you're at a birth center, then it might be a little bit different because the environment is supposed to be calming for the laboring person. And people who work at birth centers understand that because, as I said, alternative care tends to be a more approach that can help with that. I also want to highlight that you can also think about how, if you're thinking about maybe drinking water, whatever that looks like for you, maybe you have some water goals that you're trying to incorporate. Maybe you're trying to think about some different ways that you can try your hardest to maybe drink maybe 2 more bottles a day than what you usually do, or maybe 1 more bottle a day, or maybe you have a reusable can, or whatever that looks like. And so I think that's going to be really important, because water is one of the best ways that we can flush out the nonsense that capitalism pushes in our esophagus every single day. You know, we definitely need to think about how some of us sweat. And if you have more sweat going out than you have water coming in, then that can lead to dehydration and things like that. For those of us that get really bad headaches and migraines, water is going to be really key with that, because it's going to help to keep our blood flowing better. And I've talked to, I think they're called phlebotomists. I've talked to phlebotomists before, the people who draw blood, because I'm always curious. I try to drink so much water a day. And I always ask them when they're drawing my blood, do you engage with people who don't drink as much water? Does it take you longer for the blood to come out? And usually the answer is yes, because, you know, water allows the blood to be more fluid, which means it's more movable, right? And so when it takes longer for the blood to come out, that's because they don't have as much liquid in their blood to help it move faster, which is just fascinating to me. I mean, that is really interesting to me. So I think that's really important to think about how much water we're drinking and how we can try to drink more if we can. Maybe we need to be mindful that we still need to be near restrooms if we're going to be doing that. And believe me, I totally get it. I really do. But I think that in terms of being better organizers, that's going to be something that we can also think about. Because as I said before, if you're drinking more water, then that means you're conditioning your body to be in a better space, where it's not going to be able to be broken down as easily because you don't have as much sodium, or you don't have as much sugar coming in from drinks that have those kind of things in them, right? Speaking of sugar, you know, just trying to be mindful of what less sugar looks like, whatever that looks like for you. We all know that sugar is a very addictive concept. And so I think it's really important to also think about how, that's intentional. The society that we live in wants us to be addicted to sugar, because sugar is one of the fastest ways that entities can make money. whether it's people who make desserts, whether it's people who make breakfast cereals with sugar. It could be people who are making drinks with sugar. I mean, we name a food that doesn't have sugar in it. I mean, there's sugar in everything. And the sugar that I'm talking about is processed, which makes it that much worse because it's very difficult to just release that from your system because, as I said, there's additives in it that make you challenge your brain to think about ways that you need to have access to it all the time. So we got to think about that in more context and what that looks like in terms of trying to pull away from that. Again, if you're able to think more clearly, then that's going to affect your organizing skills. And if that affects your organizing skills, then you're going to be able to build up whatever organization you are working with in a better space because now you're more equipped to handle what's coming and you're able to navigate through these things differently because you are more agile, because you are stronger on your feet, because you might have more ideological support behind you, and because your body is not weighed down by all the physical toxins and consumable toxins that we're taking in, right? And so, that also means thinking about how we can increase more alkaline in our system, whatever that looks like. Maybe that's buying alkaline water, whatever that looks like. We can think about that. Turmeric. I talk about this all the time with my parents. And one of our comrades in the AAPRP is serious about their turmeric tea. And I just love them so much for that. But, you all know turmeric is like amazing. Like for real, like turmeric is amazing how many functions and abilities that spice has. So turmeric by itself can help protect us from pollution and sunlight damages like skin disease and skin cancer onsets is what I'm saying. But turmeric has so many other properties that I couldn't even list in this slide because it just would have taken up too much time. So, if you have access to tolerate turmeric, if you can digest turmeric, if you like the taste of it, try to cook it and try to use it, try to add it to your cooking meals as much as possible. Try to cook with it as much as you can. As I said, they make turmeric tea. I went to the farmer's market yesterday and the vendor had turmeric soap. So maybe you don't like the taste of it, but maybe you can use your body to cleanse with it. I'm sure you might be able to find a way to, maybe add a little bit of it to your water if you like the taste of it, whatever that looks like for you. I definitely use it when I'm making tacos. I use it when I'm making chili, but I'm starting to put it in things that I wouldn't normally put it in because it's, as I said, it's good for me. And so I'm trying to put as much as I can in everything that I'm eating so that I can have more access to it. So just remember, turmeric is a way of life, and we should definitely be incorporating that more and more and more. And then, I don't have to remind you all that, we live in a society where the meat that we have access to is processed. And we also live in a society where it's all about selling as much meat as possible, as fast as possible, because what is capitalism? Capitalism is capitalism is a system that protects private corporations so that they can continue to make as much money as possible at the expense of you and I put together, right? As long as they keep making money, then they're going to continue to thrive and do well, even if you and I are dying because we're eating their meat-produced products that are carcinogens with them, right? And so I think that it's important to think about that because if we were to adopt a plant-based lifestyle, which I'm not saying you should, but if you were, then you can already see how not having processed meats in your lifestyle would do wonders for you already. I mean, you see how they treat the animals. You see how they treat pigs. You see how they treat cows. You see how they treat chickens. If you eat goats, you see that goats are no better off. Lamb, all of those animals are not being treated with respect whatsoever. So it's no surprise to me that the meat that comes from those animals is not going to be as up to par as it should be, right? And so I think that we need to think about that too, in terms of thinking about how with plant-based lifestyles, there is more evidence to support that there's a prevention of cancer and heart disease if you adopt plant-based lifestyles. Now, again, that can be a challenge for many, many reasons. We grow up in a society that is meat and dairy dependent. And as a person who is plant-based, I can tell you it is very challenging if you were to give up cheese and if you are to give up dairy, if you are to give up meat. But I can also tell you that that's not impossible. It's just going to be challenging. There are additives in cheese that make it so that it is literally an addictive nutrient for your brain. That's why so many people, when they say to me, "You're a vegan?" "Oh, I can't give up cheese." there's evidence and research behind that. That's because it has addictive nutrients in it, to where you literally can't think about going in your life without cheese. There's a reason for that, just like sugar. And so I just think it's important that we think about that, because it's not by accident. That's the society we live in. And I mean, this is a very dairy and meat dependent society. Those are some of the biggest industries and how they make their money. And so we have to think about that in more context, though, you all, because it's not benefiting any of us, especially if it's affecting how we organize, right? And so I think that it's important to think about that. And then, on this concept of mental health, I think we should be very careful in talking about that, because mental health is such a delicate thing that this society also doesn't value and doesn't take seriously, right? And so I think that that's going to be really helpful in thinking about different ways that we can navigate through that. Now, I will say, if you are not in an organization that's working for justice, then one of the best ways that you can help your mental health is by joining an organization that is working for justice. And you don't have to take my word for it. You can look at the chat, which I'm hoping people will back me up and say it's been beneficial for them in terms of having mental protection, because it's nice to be able to be in an organization or to be in a work study where you can complain about capitalism and other people will agree with you for once. We usually live in a society where when you have those kind of comments and when you say things that are like that, it's very difficult for people to accept that, because so many people rush to protect capitalism and they rush to protect the United States and being quote unquote American citizens and all that stuff. So it's really, really, really refreshing when you just live in a work study space and you can just legit say, this is really messed up that there are shelterless tent colonies set up outside, but yet people are still doing what they need to do to go on with business as usual, and they just don't have to be humane in terms of acknowledging that other people are sacrificing. And then you say things like that, and then people who are at your work study circle will agree with you 9 times out of 10, because that's why they decided to join an organization, was because they also saw what the flaws and the contradictions were, and they wanted to do something about it as well. I have all these conversations with my work study members all the time. And we talk about different examples of socialism. We talk about different examples of how capitalism tries to take us down. And it's very, very refreshing to have these spaces to talk to people in, because I can't necessarily talk about that at my job. I can't necessarily hold conversations with people who are ideologically equipped to talk about it with as well at my job, right? And so I think it's important to think about, how does that affect your mental health when you literally have a space where you can talk about ways that the system is trying to dehumanize you? Where else can you talk about that? And where else can you talk about it where everybody in that space has read the same material you've read, so that they can have conversations with you and use evidence from the chapters to back what it is they're trying to say? It's such a gift to be able to do that. And so this is, again, why we encourage the increase of political education as much as possible. But I also want to add in, some of us are really big on journaling. And journaling has also been supported by evidence, by research and evidence, to show that it's extremely instrumental to help when you are in spaces where you might feel anxious, where you might feel like you are in desperate need of doing something and you're not sure how to move forward, but something needs to be done. Maybe you're experiencing some very stressful things because we do live in capitalism. Maybe you're experiencing stressful things at your job because we live in a capitalist society. Whatever that looks like, journaling has been supported time and time again from overwhelming research, that it has been instrumental in helping people to gain ground on ways that they can navigate through it. For once, being able to write it down helps you to acknowledge that it's real and that that this is wrong, that it's happening to you, and that you feel whatever kind of way because of it. And then after you're able to document that, you're able to probably navigate some different ways and document some ways that you too will try to move forward. Maybe these are notes that you're keeping because you might have a professional therapist that you're seeing, or maybe these are notes that you're keeping just because you're trying to keep track of how your feelings are shifting over time. Whatever that looks like, being able to be honest and to admit that this wrong thing is happening to you, I think is going to be so critical. We talk all the time on this seminar about how the society we live in literally works 24 hours a day to make us feel like we are incapable, to make us feel like we are not worthy, to make us feel like our lives don't matter, and they don't, to make us feel like we are not enough, and to make us feel like there are multiple things that are wrong with us. And even as a person who is in work study, and even as a person who humbly organizes with the All African People's Revolutionary Party, I struggle with not letting capitalism win, because it is an overwhelming system. And it has been working overtime since before I was born to remind me that I am not enough. So it's not, you're not going to be able to battle that overnight and win. That's a constant thing that you have to work through every single day, every single moment of every single day. You have to tell yourself, I am being taught to feel like something is wrong with me right now. From the moment I turn on any type of media, I'm going to see several commercials where they're going to be selling items because my skin is too dark, or my skin is too oily, my teeth are not white, my hair is not straight, my hair is too curly, my hair is too straight. I mean, they have products for everything, so that you can prick and primp and cut and do all these things to yourself so that you can eventually become perfect and eventually become a decent human being, but not until you spend all this money doing so. And in the process of that, your emotional well-being just goes down the drain completely, right? And the system doesn't have to think about the damages that it's done in that way, right? And so I think it's important to think more about that, because again, that's what capitalism is set up to do, is to make you feel like you're a failure, to make you feel like you're not doing a good enough job. This is why we should all be grateful for having jobs, right? That's capitalism. And then when we want to leave early, or when we're excited because a holiday is coming up, we're supposed to feel guilty. We're supposed to stay as late as we can. We should go in on our weekends off, and we shouldn't ask about getting paid for our compensation and our labor, because we should, quote, just be happy to have a job, right? And I do agree to some extent that being able to have money coming in is a wonderful thing, because we want to be able to use that money, A, to build the party or to build the organization, but B, because some of us like to have resources that money can buy, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. But I do at the same time think that it's dangerous to think too much about how capitalism is in our heads, because I think in doing that, then we start to forget that capitalism needs us. We don't need capitalism. You know, this is a system where they're not going to be able to manage their private corporations if we don't contribute to that, because we're the cogs on the wheel making it happen, right? They need us so that they can continue doing what they need to do. And so this is why we have to remember our worth. This is why we have to increase our political education. This is why we have to not let them win. And we have to remind ourselves that whatever we're supposed to be doing, we need to advance humanity everywhere when we get it done. That's going to be really important that we do that. So I think journaling is a way to do that. I listed on here, you know, maybe it's taking a 20-minute walk every day. Maybe it's playing different music based on how you're feeling and trying really hard to expose yourself to as many different musical artists as possible. Maybe it's learning how to play a musical instrument. Maybe that affects your mental health. Whatever that looks like for you, finding a way to participate in game night, finding a way to engage with nature. That's going to be so important, you all. There is overwhelming research out there that smelling flowers and having plants indoors affects your depression. It affects your mental health in multiple ways. It affects your ability to think consciously about yourself and to think kindly about yourself. And it affects your ability to have less onset of depression, reduced anxiety, whatever the case may be. And so I think it's really important that we think about what it means to, you know, take walks in nature. I'm not saying you have to buy a $25 bouquet of roses, because not everybody has the resources to do that. But being able to get to a flower garden, or maybe planting a flower garden if you have the space to do that, indoor or outdoor, planting one. I found so much research on having plants in the house that I was blown away. So of course we know that, you know, fresh oxygen is always a good thing in terms of our mental health. But beyond that, having plants in the house also affects your onset of depression. It affects your onset of anxiety. It allows you, literally, the exposure to you seeing a green or yellow type of color literally does something to your not your hypothalamus. It does something to a specific part of your brain that forces you to think about good and happiness, and it takes you to a happy place, and it affects your dopamine. And so having plants in your house, again, affects your depression, affects your anxiety, and allows you to think in a different way about how you can start to accomplish things, because you feel more entrusted and you feel more capable, as opposed to feeling like you're not able to do things because the imposter syndrome is kicking in. And so I just want to close and move to the last slide and just continue to help us think about different ways that we can protect ourselves through all of this. And forgive me, you all, I have not been remembering to do a plug for raising money for the All African People's Revolutionary Party African Liberation Day. So I'm going to do that now. So the last couple of slides, you saw that at the top we had a link, and I again forgot to mention it. So I'm doing that now. Please make sure you all go to our website so that you can donate. We are raising money for the African Liberation Day event that is coming up. And so you all know that we have the virtual events every year, but we're also having some on the ground in-person events. And so I think that it's also really, really important to think about how much goes in to making sure that African Liberation Day can be conducted, okay? And so, we have to pay for translators because we have events all around the world, especially at home on the continent. So we have translators, and we're colonized, so we need Portuguese translators, we need French translators, we need Spanish translators, we need translators who can travel to different events, because we have multiple events at home where we are celebrating African Liberation Day. We need to have honorariums for our guest speakers that are coming. We need to help our comrades travel, because some of our comrades have events at their home country, and then they're traveling to other countries to help organize other ALD events. And so we have all these different things that need to take place. And then those are the in-person events. And then we have a virtual broadcast that is internationally done, where we have speakers on the agenda. We have MCs that are navigating it. And we have so many other things where we need money to help support those things. So we definitely need your support as much as possible. African Liberation Day is a very, very well celebrated event in the AAPRP, and we never start organizing too early for it. So please, please, please visit our website, aaprp-int.org, so that you can help us support and participate. And so again, you would just go to the website, and on the right, you can click join organization. And then after you click on that, you don't have to automatically join. From there, it gives you the option to donate. And so that's when you can set it up so that you can donate for this worthy event that we have coming up. ALD is one of the most major events that we celebrate. So we ask that you donate as much as you can and help us to get this event on track, because our task force has already been organizing the theme, and they will be coming out with that very soon, but we need to start to get ready for that. So please make sure you help us support that cause and share it with your friends so that they can support as well. So, okay, we've talked about where we've been in terms of our timeline of suffering from colonization. And then I tried my humblest to talk about some different concepts that we could think about in terms of trying to protect our sleep a little bit more, trying to incorporate more water and less sugar, thinking about our mental health, and thinking about how all of this affects our ability to organize. So now, we want to start to tie in what some of those solutions can still look like for us, right? So since slavery, our health has not been prioritized. We have been taught our medical needs are not critical. And if our health is significant by society, then one way we can do that is by understanding to increase our political education. We'll have a better chance of understanding where we have been versus where we are going in terms of how we want to protect our health. I also think it's important for us to start to have more conversations with our family members so that we can get a very basic understanding of why we should be trying to fight against capitalism. So I don't know if you all are talking about this with your family members, but we need to understand why capitalism is not a system that we want to support. I think, that's going to be the best way that we can be resisting against it, is by talking about why it's such a horrible system to begin with, and really highlighting that for children, even as young as 3 years old, helping them to understand that. highlighting that for our siblings, highlighting that for our in-laws, highlighting that for anyone that we can, and being consistent about that, because helping people understand why we don't want to support that system will help us to better understand why we need to be stronger to resist it. And being stronger to resist it means doing the best we can to take care of our bodies so that we can fight against the cause, right? And so I think that's really key in thinking about that, because if you're highlighting why capitalism is not the solution, then that means that you need to also talk about why achieving one socialist Africa is. So what is it about socialism, and why is socialism the ideal system, but capitalism is not? Having those conversations. You know, I share with you all the time how I love talking with my work study group, because I love to bring up going to the dog park. That's one of the best socialist programs that I can think of. You can go to a public dog park and you don't have to pay money for it. Sure, you're spending money in gas to drive there, but once you get to the dog park, you don't have to pay for that. Why? Because the taxes are taken out of your check every month, so that people who work for the Parks and Rec division services, they get paid out of the taxes taken out of your check to go to those dog parks and empty the trash cans, to cut the grass, to make sure the lights are updated with light bulbs, to make sure that there are bags equipped in the pooper scooper station so that you can have a bag to pick up the feces when your dog goes to the bathroom. Like, all of that is based on socialism. And the same thing if you have a child and you take your child to the playground. You don't have to pay a fee to have your child play on the swings or the slide. That's all based on how we work as humans. And then money is taken out of our checks every month. And that money goes into managing the grounds, literally paying for oil if the lawnmower is ran on gasoline, or paying for it to be charged up if it's an electric lawnmower, paying for people to have a salary so that they can literally work for these Parks and Recs divisions and be able to get a monthly stipend so that they can manage these parks and take care of it. It's also based on helping us to understand that, you know, if a fire breaks out right now, which of course I hope it doesn't, but I do not have the capacity to take care of a fire. I don't have, you know, gosh, what is it called? A fire hydrant. I don't have access to a fire hydrant. I don't even have a hose. There's a water spigot outside my apartment, but I don't even have a hose to put out a fire, okay? And, you know, we know that hoses wouldn't even have enough pressure in them to put the blazes out anyway. So, you know, the first thing we would think to do if a fire broke out is to do what? To call the fire department. Again, socialism. Because I don't know about you, but I don't have access to those things. But the system that we live in allows for us to have taxes taken out where fire people can get paid so that they can go in and put their lives on the line if that's what they choose to do. They have training that they complete. All of those things can be done with them so that they know how to navigate fires and they know how to deal with those things. And so I think it's important to talk about these examples, you all, because you know, people can live their life and never understand what socialism is and go to the park every day. They can live their life and have a car accident and have the emergency medical team come to them, as well as people from the fire department, and never understand what socialism is, especially because we've been taught lies about what it is. So it's up to us to do the research. And that means that we're going to have more concrete conversations about what that looks like. I also think that it's important for us to think about how, in talking about capitalism and in talking about socialism, of course, we need to talk about colonization, and we also need to talk about ways to resist it. You know, one of the best things that we always talk about on this seminar is that we never force people to join the All African People's Revolutionary Party. We just beg and plead that you will join an organization that is working for justice. Any organization that is working for justice. We never said that you had to join our organization that is working for justice. Maybe you're really interested in following the Nation of Islam. Go for it. Maybe you're really interested in joining Liberation Road. Go for it. Maybe you're really interested in supporting the Palestinian Liberation Organization, or maybe you're really spent on supporting another organization of some type. We never said you had to join the AAPRP, but we asked that you join some organization that is working for justice. Why? Because the more of us that are organized, the more connections we can start to make with the consistent problems that we're all facing, and we can start to connect and work more together in fixing those problems. As I just said before, we've had speakers, speaking of ALD, we've had speakers from the Palestinian Liberation Organization. They spoke last year at ALD. We had speakers from our sibling organizations at home. We've had speakers from the PAIGC. We've had speakers from other political organizations in Azania in South Africa and whatnot. And so the point I'm making to you is these organizations are on a parallel path with the AAPRP. And so we have asked them to be keynote speakers at our organization events because we agree with their ideology, and vice versa. We support them getting their land back, and they support us getting our land back. And we want all of us to be able to have access to the control of our resources because we all have our land back. For years, we've had speakers from the Socialist Irish Republic organization. I mean, since I was born, I can remember them coming and speaking. For years, they have been on the agenda to speak, and that's not an accident, you all. So like I said, we just want you to join an organization that is working for justice, and it needs to work for justice because we have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of work to do. I know you all heard about the brother who passed away, unfortunately was murdered here in Memphis, and he was from California. And, you know, some of us keep thinking that if we have more people in office that look like us, or more people on the police force that look like us, then these problems won't occur anymore where Africans are being gunned down and murdered. You all saw that all the Africans that killed this brother were African. You saw that, right? I hope you were paying attention. And so, like, that's precisely why that's not the answer. Having African police officers is not the answer. Having African politicians is not the answer, you all. It's not the answer. It's not the answer. It's not the answer. The county that I live in, the county mayor is African. And you still had an African person who was gunned down and killed by 5 Africans. So that's not the solution. But if we change the system that we live in where it does not put money over people, then people will stop being murdered in the street because they will actually matter. You all have to continue to organize and you'll see it. You have to continue to organize and you'll see it. But it's going to take a lot of dedication. It's going to take a lot of increased political education, and it's going to take commitment to discipline, and it's going to take commitment to principle. And a lot of us are going to have to work through that because for some of us, we don't know how to do that yet. We also are still not in organizations, and it's already been 22 days into the new year and we're still not organizing. So we got to continue to work through what is it that's holding us back? What is it that's not allowing us to get where we need to get? Because we have what we need to join. Especially if you're listening to this broadcast right now, you see the importance of organizing. So I strongly encourage you, if you're not in an organization, to join one immediately. And maybe that means you start by doing the research tonight after this seminar, but it's going to take all of us. And that means that all of us in every organization known to humankind, we're all going to need to be a part of that. All right, you all, I so appreciate your patience with me. It's been a rough 2 weeks. I look forward to our comrade coming back, but hopefully I was able to manage everything okay. I remembered to record this time around. So you will see this one later on YouTube if you're not watching it right now. And again, I just hope that you all continue to stay safe. We thank you so much for joining us. As I said, next week, assuming the ancestors are able to get our comrade back safe and sound, we'll hear from Comrade Ajamu, who will talk about a report out of the first ever AAPRP and PAIGC Party of Congress that took place, okay? So, you know, and I'm sorry, I should mention that the PAIGC organization stands for the Pan African Independence of Guinea-Bissau, okay? So what we did was we did a joint Party of Congress with our comrades who are organizing in Guinea-Bissau. And sorry, Guinea-Conakry, I'm sorry, but the event took place in Guinea-Bissau. So what we did was we had a joint Party of Congress with our comrades from the organization of the Pan African Independence of Guinea-Conakry but it took place in Guinea-Bissau, and it was also the All African People's Revolutionary Party first party of Congress as well. So my dad is going to be able to give a report out of what that looked like for them, what type of policies they were able to vote on and were able to change, how we're going to be moving forward as an organization, what it looks like for our sibling organization in terms of how they're moving forward, and what some of our aligned policies are now going to be looking like. It's going to be such a great conversation. I'm really looking forward to it. And so we hope that you will join us next week, same time on the 29th of January, 4 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Central, and 7 Eastern. Excuse me. We also ask that you continue to support our shop, AAPRP Forward Ever Shop. You all can see that they're selling some really incredible African period merchandise. So make sure you all check it out. They have hoodie sweatshirts as well as t-shirts there. We have our Etsy link there for you so you can see that. And then we have several different media channels that are broadcasting similar broadcasts as the one you just heard. So, we have of course, our website, aaprp-intl.org. And again, please don't forget to go there and help support us by raising money for the African Liberation Day event. It's going to be epic and spectacular, but we do need money to help raise for that event. So please don't forget to donate for ALD coming up for 2023. But of course, in addition to that, you can go to the blog, abetterworld.me. You can also check out some different Telegram broadcasts that are happening with Hood Communists. You all know that there are some incredible authors who are, some of them are actually here in the broadcast right now. Shout out to Salifu. But we also have other authors who were just at home participating in the Party of Congress. And so they'll be coming back, and I'm sure the Hood Communist authors will be talking about the Party of Congress as well. So make sure you download the Telegram app so you can check out their bi-monthly broadcasts that they have going on. You can also check out the Pontula podcast that takes place on Mondays on YouTube. So that's with our comrades, Evan and Jamila. They are usually recording their sessions ahead of time, and then they are available Monday nights for us to check out. We have the AAPRP Revolutionary African Women that takes place the last Saturdays of the month. We also have the Forward Ever broadcast. And then, of course, shout out to our New Mexico chapter, the AAPRP New Mexico Weekly Newscast. Takes place on Thursdays at 12 noon Mountain Standard Time, okay? And so again, we ask that you all join us next week on the 29th so that we can hear a report back from Comrade Ajamu about the first ever AAPRP and PAIGC Party of Congress. And then, of course, I need to do a plug. This book that my dad wrote is really getting so much headway, and he wrote it in the intention of expanding the Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare that Kwame Nkrumah wrote. So if you are able to check out A Guide for Organizing Defense Against White Supremacist, Patriarchal, and Fascist Violence, then you should think about what it means to pick up a copy of that, because he kind of breaks down why the All African People's Revolutionary Party exists, what the purpose of our organization is, why it's important to organize, and what it means, even if you don't join the AAPRP, how you can organize with another organization. And what are the steps of doing that? Literally, step by step, chapter by chapter, he breaks that down. He also has a really great glossary at the end of the book that just kind of gives a little bit more clarity to some of these terms that we may need to have clarity for, because maybe we don't understand what AAPRP stands for, or ALD, or whatever that might look like with our abbreviations. So you all, I just appreciate you all so much. Last week I ended right on time. This week I'm 2 minutes early, but I just appreciate you. I'm going to try to take a little break and check out our comment section just to make sure I got everything. So thank you all so much for joining us. I'm just reading these real quick, trying to make sure I don't miss anything. Thank you all so much for your comments. I appreciate y'all so much. Okay, I think we're good. All right, you all. Well, I'm gonna give you 2 minutes back. Okay, we're gonna end 2 minutes early. So take that, capitalism. Okay. All right, you all, stay safe, forward ever, backwards never. Thank you again. And we are building one unified socialist Africa. Take care, you all, and we'll see you next weekend. Be safe. Thank you.